Hey, what's up guys? I am back from vacation and ready to get back into bringing you the latest in video game commentary and news. Thanks for tuning in to His White Lights Versus. And this week saw the release of a new arcade racing game, which is always a plus for me, but it's also a sequel to a game that I was highly underwhelmed by. Of course, this game is the cross-country MMO racing game The Crew 2, co-developed by Ivory Tower and Ubisoft Reflections. Just like last time, we're going to be examining the big three: graphics, gameplay, and replayability, to see if it measures up to other racing games. For those of you who did not play the first entry in the series, The Crew was billed as a racing MMO of sorts. The genre was introduced by the Test Drive Unlimited series, where players are dropped into a huge open world with tasks to complete along with other drivers. The original also prided itself at recreating a huge open world that highlighted the best racing environments for the entirety of the continental United States. Players could literally race from coast to coast if they chose to. In my opinion, the first Crew title took itself way too seriously, and the open world seemed lifeless with wide open and barren landscapes with nothing to do. Have they fixed the issues of the first game and corrected those missteps of the original? Let's take a look to find out. To begin with, let's take a look at the graphics and how they measure up to other racing titles. Does Ivory Tower give us some noticeable improvements over the original? The graphics in The Crew 2 are certainly a step up from the originals. However, that is not saying that they are not without concerning issues. The game looks its best when you take control of one of the numerous boats available to you and speed across the canals and oceans in the game. On the flip side, the game looks good in its regular driving portions but fails to really push the boundaries in any fashion. Along with water driving, the sections of the game that take place after a storm with wet pavement really highlight the updated reflections and lighting in this game. Additionally, the cars, boats, and planes in the game all have the appropriate details, from brake calipers to vents to seams between body panels. And again, while it's a step up from the original in terms of details and fidelity, the models do not hold up against other racers in the genre. Of course, this is somewhat expected with the sheer scale of the game and the draw distances needed to be locked in when transforming from a car to a plane at the press of a button. Again, the updated lighting goes a long way to really make the vehicle models stand out. Other reviews have praised these vehicle models, but I am not seeing how these models are an improvement over any other offerings in the genre. While the game excels in presenting players with a dynamic weather system and great-looking swamps and wooded areas, the game really struggles with its urban environments the most, as they seem to always be bland and lifeless, somewhat in the vein of the original. Fortunately, you will be racing through them at considerable speeds, but you can tell that the developers spent more time piecing together believable areas outside these dense cityscapes. Overall, the graphics in The Crew 2 are certainly an upgrade from the original, and the lighting really goes the extra mile to make reflections and water effects look great. However, the lifeless environments and bland urban areas mar an otherwise across-the-board improvement here. Next, let's take a look at the gameplay, because there is a lot of interesting and almost goofy improvements on this front. Let me get one thing out of the way before we discuss anything else concerning gameplay here. I absolutely despise the car handling in the original. The cars felt like they handled on a pivot point and not sitting on top of four tires. This completely turned me off to the first Crew game, and while I can say that handling has been improved, it is still similar to the handling in the first game, at least with the cars. This disappointed me greatly, but I was able to get beyond this issue because there are other types of vehicles players can drive here. The big selling point of The Crew 2 is the fact that players can, at a moment's notice, swap the type of vehicle they are driving. Essentially, players can transform their plane into a car, free fall down to the street below, and then transform their car into a boat to continue whatever event they may be playing. This makes for excellent moments you will not find anywhere else in the arcade racing genre. I truly enjoyed being able to do this, as there is never a wall or boundary that stops your driving progression. You can just transform your vehicle and continue on. This works wonderfully also with the entirety of the United States to explore. The tracks and events within the game also highlight its over-the-top nature, with races being hectic and action-packed. One thing I would like to point out about this ridiculous feature is it's most certainly inspired by Ubisoft Reflections' previous work on Driver San Francisco. In this game, you controlled Tanner, a mainstay in the series, who is actually in a coma in this game, but can possess the other drivers on the road and control their vehicles. In a way, this feature of vehicle hopping was given new life with The Crew 2. Lastly, let's discuss what this game has to offer to keep players engaged. Unfortunately, this is a double-edged sword for The Crew 2. On the surface, The Crew 2 offers a multitude of events, driving disciplines, a social space, an RPG-style progression system, and, as I have mentioned before, the entirety of the United States to explore. But this can be overwhelming when first trying out the game. Players will just have to progress in the most expedient way they see fit to see all the game has to offer. While playing the events in The Crew 2, there are 14 driving disciplines to explore housed in 4 driving families that include Street, Off-Road, Freestyle, and Pro. Street and Off-Road are self-explanatory, while Freestyle includes monster trucks, jet sprint boating, and plane aerobatics. The Pro discipline features air racing, power boating, touring, and Grand Prix cars, so you can see there are many driving disciplines to learn the nuances of in this game. This level of tailor-made player experiences also extends into your personal apartment, which players are allowed to customize to their liking. This is another feature that comes directly inspired by another title, namely Test Drive Unlimited. Players can also park their featured vehicles in their living space and use the robust editor to design decals and paint schemes for them. I was surprised by how much time I sunk into making sure my designs were perfect. The RPG-style upgrade system has not changed much since the original. Players still get randomized loot after races and must grind for better parts. It always frustrates me that in today's gaming climate that players are still at the mercy of RNG. I prefer knowing exactly what I'm going to receive from an event and working to achieve that reward. The system still has the problems of the first game also, especially considering that you can just equip your most powerful parts and move on. I saw really no incentive whatsoever to experiment here, and I was hoping for a more nuanced approach to the system with The Crew 2. Lastly, on the multiplayer side of things, The Crew 2 is missing a few options. While players can play the game cooperatively and travel through the entire world with each other, PvP is nowhere to be found. Ivory Tower has stated that it's going to be released in an update in December of this year, but it was featured at launch in the first game, and I'm not sure why this is the case. This definitely puts a hamper on the competitive side of this game. Alright, to sum things up, The Crew 2 is developed by Ivory Tower and Ubisoft Reflections. While it is a marked improvement over the original and offers a lot more replayability, there are still lingering problems that keep this title from achieving greatness. The multiple racing disciplines and events will keep players engaged, but the lifeless environments and glaring omission of PvP until December hurts this entry. Essentially, The Crew 2 looks better and offers more for players to experience if you're willing to overlook its missteps. I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. Okay guys, thanks for tuning in to His White Lights Versus. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. Let me know what you think about The Crew 2 in the comments below, and consider subscribing to my channel for more video game news and commentary. Until next time guys.